Good afternoon. I'm Assessor Perales. I have the privilege of serving as Secretary of State. I just want to quickly acknowledge Lou D'Ambrosio, the CEO of Sears, who's with us, and of course my boss, Governor Andrew M.Cuomo, who asked me to be here and introduce him. But I just wanted to say a couple of words. One is that it was only, I think about 2 weeks ago, that the governor asked me to try to organize the contributions that he said would be made by business, by corporations. I said to myself, this has got to be the easiest job he's ever given me. There can't be more than a handful of businesses that will come forward and offer to do something for the victims of Sandy. Well, needless to say, less than a week had gone by, and I had already over 100 offers of contributions that were being made by businesses in our state and beyond our state. So they included donations of things such as generators, pallets of water, winter jackets, even things like free concerts to lift the spirits of the people in the shelters. So I will no longer question an assignment I get from the governor. They're usually very real. And this one has certainly been a real one. The donations continue to come. And we're here today to acknowledge a very special one. And to help me do that is somebody who is working very closely with Gary Officer. Gary Officer is working very closely with Sears, their partners, and they have a very unique relationship, and they're providing us with a very unique gift. And so with that, let me ask Gary to come forward. He is the President and CEO of Rebuilding Together.
Thank you very much. Let me first of all thank the Governor and Cesar and Lou for their outstanding support for the victims of this horrible incident. I'd like to recognize my board chair who is here, Brad Siegel. Brad. And my board secretary, Reese Fade. Reese. I would like also to acknowledge the governor because we've been through several disaster recovery work, unfortunately, around the country in recent years, and the governor has really stepped up in a very big way to galvanize the support of the nonprofit community, the business community, but also agencies of the federal and local government. So kudos to you, Mr. Governor. We have been in this space of rebuilding communities for over 30 years, but what has really defined Rebuilding Together in recent years has been our ability, when it comes to incidents of natural disaster, to really tap what I call the goodness of the American spirit and the genius of philanthropy, and to take those two and really focus our energies on helping those in need. And as you can tell, I have this unique accent. I'm not from Brooklyn, unfortunately, but I love concrete. I'm a guy from a large city in Europe by birth. I'm not a fisherman. I love concrete. I love neighborhoods. I love people. And as we take on the New Jersey and New York disaster, it brings to mind something that I've often observed about New York. Its people have a certain resiliency. And that resiliency tends to kick in when you are confronted by something way beyond our most dire imagination. And Hurricane Sandy really captured, for many people, a real sense of urgency that beyond our differences, we have to come together to help those who are in most need. And Rebuilding Together, thanks to our partner Sears Holdings, was able to raise and leverage over $1 million in just about 2 weeks. That $1 million will then leverage a further $4 million that we will use to both support our affiliates, many of whom are behind the governor, Cesar and Lou, to take those funds, identify these homeowners, focus initially on critical repairs, and then start the process of identifying homes that we can really target for heavy and deep construction rehabilitation. That's what we do, but we cannot do what we do without the support of the business community. I'd like to also to make a point of informing today's audience that it's very important in disasters to be aware of contractor fraud. What we learned about New Orleans and Katrina was when you get beyond the natural disaster, when you get beyond the insurance payout, there are a lot of contractors out there who are just waiting to abuse the unsuspecting homeowner. It is critical that homeowners are making sure they understand their rights, do their research, check the Better Business Bureau, and do as much homework as possible before they engage any contractor on any work to be performed. Finally, I think it's important to say that our work in this space in the next year or so will not be one that's rooted in isolation. We are working with other nonprofit partners through the National Volunteer Organization active in disaster and VOAD, so we're not going to trip over each other and duplicate our services. We'll be coordinating our work so we can help as many homeowners as possible. That's our pledge to New York, that's our pledge to our friends across the river, and that's our pledge to the residents who we will support in the months ahead. With that, I now introduce Lou D'Ambrosio. Lou is the CEO of Sears Holdings. Sears has been rebuilding together's most important partner over the last 5 years. They helped us to rebuild many homes in New Orleans and across the Gulf. We completed some 1,300 rehabilitations for homes that are owned by recently returning veterans from Afghanistan and Iraq. Whenever we have called Sears for help, Sears has never said no. And Lou and his team have been wonderful partners of ours. And with that, I'd like to introduce Lou D'Ambrosio to say a few words.
Thanks, Gary. Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon, everybody. Let me start by just talking a little personal. My wife and I and the kids lived in New York for several years, and we're always in the city, and we're always in New York. And there's not a place in the world like New York. So what happened here with the storm was terrible, but nothing that's going to hold back New Yorkers. The team here, the New York construct, the compost of the people will respond. They'll have a resiliency to overcome this. There's no place in the world like this place. What I'd like to do today is give a few perspectives on what we are doing at Sears to help with that rebound, to help get people back into their homes. This all started a couple weeks ago, and with a call from the governor, who both with his words as well as with his tone asked us what we could do, gave a texture on what was happening in this city, in this state, that was difficult to see just on the news, but it was through a personal perspective. We worked very hard to figure out what type of resources we could bring to the table to help this great state. And what I'd like to talk to you today is about 5 actions that we are doing to help the victims of the storm. The first, we have sent many truckloads filled with water, to blankets, to generators, to food, to help the victims. And basically took trucks from all over the country to bring them to this state to do the right thing for the victims and those who were impacted the most. Secondly, at Sears we have a membership program, a loyalty program called Shop Your Way. And what we did is people have Shop Your Way accounts. We basically put money into people's accounts and told them, go use it. So essentially free money into their membership accounts to go use, and we split the money based on how badly they were impacted by the storm and zip code, so they could help get back on the road to recovery. We also put opportunities for our customers to provide giving at our cash wraps to be administered through the Red Cross. Fourthly, one of the additional things we're talking about today is once you go through that initial period of the devastation and the shock, then you have to get back to your life. And if it's great to have the blanket for the first couple weeks to keep you warm, but then you have to live again, and you have to cook again, and you have to wash clothes again, and so forth. So we wanted to ensure that people get appliances at very, very attractive prices. So that's why today we are bringing forward an appliance program, such that the people in Zone A will get very attractive prices, significantly better than what others are getting. So for example, there could be a week where the broad population is getting 15% discount, people in Zone A will get 30% discount, to make sure that they have access to prices which we haven't provided broadly, but the people who are most impacted, that they could get prices for appliances to help them get back into a normal life. And then finally, to build on what Gary said, many homes were devastated. And about a year ago, Gary and I worked together on rebuilding homes, as Gary mentioned, for wounded warriors. These are people who fought, who were injured, who when they came back to their houses, either needed to have their houses capable of having a wheelchair in there or changing the configuration or the steps or what have you. These were heroes. And there certainly was heroism in the aftermath that we saw from this hurricane, from this superstorm. So we reached out to Gary last week, spoke with the governor, and said, what about if we took that same program that rebuilt houses for the wounded warriors to begin to rebuild houses for New York? The governor fully supported the idea. Gary was terrific in bringing his resources to the table, and that's exactly what we did and what we're announcing today. And we're going to start immediately. This is not something we're going to say, oh, one day we're going to do. We're going to start immediately with 5 to 10 houses. We're going to build up to 100 houses. And we're going to continue to monitor the situation to do what we need to do. So we're going to do everything we can to bring New York the goods, the services, the support, and the housing to help New Yorkers get back. And I'll begin on a personal note, and I'll end on a personal note. Thanksgiving's 2 days away. The old adage of you take things for granted until something like this happens, it's really true. And when you're in a position like I'm fortunate enough to be in, it's these types of things, the opportunity to give back, that makes it all worthwhile. So we are here for New York. We're here to do everything we can. Sears Holdings wants to see New York recover, and we're going to work very closely with the team to make that happen. I'm now going to introduce the governor. There's a long bio, which I'm sure many of you have heard before. I'll give my own perspective of the governor. It's during times like this that you see what people are made of. I could tell you, without exception, the conversations I've had with the governor since Sandy happened have been second to none. They've been authentic, they've been responsive, they've been real. We speak on the phone on Sundays, we speak on the phone on Fridays, it doesn't matter. If there's something that the people of New York need, they have an extraordinary advocate in the governor. And without further ado, Governor Cuomo.
Thank you very much. First to Cesar Perales, the Secretary of State, who's been organizing this effort. Thank you very much for your good work. To Gary Officer and his Rebuilding Together team, thank you very much. Welcome to New York. We'll have you with a New York accent. Short time, don't worry about it. We can fix that. Just look what they've done for me. Thank you very much, and for your team and for all the good work, thank you very, very much. To Lou D'Ambrosio, President and CEO of Sears Holdings, thank you for the kind words. Thank you for being a great corporate citizen. Thank you for the friendship. Thank you for the generosity. And thank you for you. You've made this happen. You've made it happen quickly. And you're right. At this point, it's personal. And New Yorkers needed a friend, and you were there, and we won't forget it. Let's give him a round of applause, Lou D'Ambrosio. In some ways, at this point in the program, everything has been said, just not everyone has said it. So let me say it quickly and put a couple of exclamation points with my own New York accent. There are two situations, two stories that are going on at the same time right now in New York. And one is the story you see on the TV at night, you see in the newspapers. You've seen for a couple of weeks now the story of hardship and trauma and tragedy and the surprise shock of the storm. I was saying to Mr. D'Ambrosio before, we don't have hurricanes in New York. We have other issues, but we don't have hurricanes. We don't have floods. This doesn't happen here. Other parts of the country, it happens. And people get accustomed to it. They deal with it. This is not what we are accustomed to. So the shock, the tragedy, the trauma is all very real. The numbers are devastating, about 200,000 homes. That's very big for us. It would be big for any place. And people adjusting to the aftermath and now settling in to the severity of the situation, because the initial period was a period of shock. And the shock in some ways braces you. People are now understanding that this is not a short-term situation. This is going to be months and months of hardship for many people. And you don't rebuild a home in 36 hours. You rebuild a home in weeks or months. And families are going to be displaced, and they're going to have to figure out how to make it work with the kids and the schools and the insurance company. So there is that story, there is no doubt. And that is an ongoing story that we're working through. And that's the story you see on TV every night. But Lou is right. A couple of days we celebrate Thanksgiving. And there is another story that is going on that is in some ways just as powerful as the stories about Hurricane Sandy. And that story is a story of humanity and community and generosity that I could never have imagined. I've been out there almost every day, and I'm telling you, I run into people from all across the country. People who just got in their car and drove and showed up, and they didn't even know where they were going. And I'd meet them, and they would say, you know what, I saw this on TV, and I just couldn't sit at home and do nothing. I wanted to come and help. People who will cook, people who will bring clothes, people who will do a little collection in their community, and just come. Church groups that just show up and say, we're here to help. Just tell us where to go and what to do. The outpouring of generosity that affirms the human spirit, and the kindness that we are capable of, and the unity that we are capable of. You know, we talk about forging community, and the fact that we are all interconnected and we're all interrelated, and at the end of the day, we're all in this together, and we understand that, but sometimes at a time of crisis, you really see it come alive. And you see how strong we can be and how good we can be when we actually come together. And you're seeing that in communities all across this city and this state. And it really is a beautiful thing. And it's beautiful on the individual level, and it is beautiful on the corporate level. And that's what Sears is all about today. I called Mr. D'Ambrosio. I had never met him. I didn't know who he was. I picked up the phone. I called him. He took the call. And he said, I can guess why you're calling. And before I even got a chance to talk to him and do my pitch, he said, I want you to know whatever we can do to help, we will. Tell me how to help. And it is such a comfort, and it is such a source of strength. You know, when you feel that you have support and you're not alone, you can do anything. And New Yorkers have been given that gift of support. And that's what Sears and that's what Mr. D'Ambrosio did for me on the telephone. And he said, we want to have a short-term plan and a long-term plan. And $1 million of emergency equipment came, and we've been distributing it. And he's right, the blankets and the generators, job one was stabilize people where they were. It was a health and safety issue, still is to some extent, but stabilize the situation short-term. Long-term, we have to now rebuild those homes. And that's not easy, and that's not overnight, and that's rebuilding together. And people have to move on, and they're going to have to equip their home, and they're going to have to replace appliances and get the house set up again, and Sears is going to be there to help them do that. And the silver lining in this storm really has been that outpouring of support and generosity. And we are resilient as New Yorkers, and we are tough as New Yorkers. That's true. But this one hurt, I can tell you that, as a New Yorker. And we needed the support of friends, and we needed the strength of friends, and we needed community to come together and to be real. And it was, and Sears was part of that. And Mr. D'Ambrosio, we thank you. Mr. Officer, we thank you. People from Rebuilding Together, thank you very much for being here.